So, Hollaback Boston just recently released their State of the Streets report, in which 87% of respondents said they had dealt with some form of street harassment. After hearing about the report and the statistics, I decided to speak to some local women to find out a bit more about street harassment and how they deal with it.
One of the things that came up in the State of the Streets survey when we did that was that not everyone considered the same things to be harassment. We asked which of these things would you consider street harassment, and there were both on the lighter end, people just staring or leering or following you off a train or something. People were like, oh, well, that's not really harassment. A few people. Most people still consider it, but a few people were like, oh, that doesn't count, that's not harassment. And then there's the more severe end of it, the more horrific assaults, the public masturbation, that kind of thing, that people say, well, but that's a crime. That's legislated against. That's a crime. That's not street harassment. That's a different thing. So there was a little bit of, it was interesting to see that confusion that people had, how do you define it? And if you do experience people honking at you, but you don't consider it threatening, and you've never thought to put the term street harassment on it, people say, oh yeah, I've never been harassed. And you say, well, have you ever had people whistle at you or honk at you? And you go, well, yeah, all the time. That's not harassment. So working within that definition and trying to get people to think of it more broadly.
Well, the only time that I really encounter it is when I'm going for a run outside or walking somewhere by myself in a really busy area. And it can consist of anything from people honking their horns or just screaming things out their window. And it makes me really uncomfortable, but I tend to just ignore it, because if you don't give people a reaction to things like that, I feel like you win.
Definitely say I haven't registered any significant thing that has felt like harassment here, and I'm from New York, so like people saying things on the street is something very familiar to me. People like really trying to have conversations with you on the street has definitely happened to me, and it's not something that I've noticed here within the square. I always had this thing of like politeness, and if someone would talk, like if someone would just like make a passing comment, I wouldn't respond. But then there was one time in particular when I really remember someone like walking along with me and trying to have a conversation, and like not feeling, even though I knew that I didn't have to answer and could just walk along, like not feeling comfortable, just like completely ignoring the person.
We do think that if you feel safe and comfortable responding, it's better to say something and make sure that that person has to acknowledge the fact that they've offended someone. If it feels empowering to them after the fact, I always think of things, 3 steps later when you're like, oh, why didn't I say that? To go online or use the app. There's a Hollaback app for iPhone and Android that will use GPS to map your location and share your story, even if it's just a quick 1-sentence thing about what happened and how it made you feel. We talked to over 500 people in this city, and that many of them said, yeah, this is a problem. This is a thing that we're experiencing that we need to deal with.